Hello, my name is Brianna Hanzelka, and today we will be discussing doping in sports. So what exactly does the term doping mean? Well, it refers to athletes who use banned substances during competitive sports. It can also be referred to as performance-enhancing drugs, or PED for short. It is used to help performance by aiding in speed, strength, endurance, or recovery time. So, what are types of performance-enhancing drugs? Well, the first is street drugs, which is basically anything illegal in the US, such as marijuana or heroin. Then we also have stimulants, anabolic steroids, human growth hormones, diuretics, anti-estrogens, blood doping, gene manipulation, and certain beta blockers. The first one we will be discussing is blood doping. Blood doping is known to be widely used by cyclists and other endurance athletes like runners, rowers, and swimmers. Blood doping artificially increases the rate at which oxygen can reach the muscles via the blood through hemoglobin. By doing this, stamina and endurance are improved, so much so that 2 minutes can be knocked off of a cyclist's overall race time in a 15-kilometer race, which is quite a lot. Currently, there are 3 types of blood doping methods. The first is blood transfusions. The second is the injections of erythropoietin, or EPO for short, which basically means that the red blood cell count increases in the body. And then number 3 is the injections of synthetic oxygen carriers. The next one we will discuss is anabolic steroids, which are very common. It is also referred to as roids or juice, and the most common example is testosterone. They enhance muscle cell growth and allow the body to recover faster from high-stress workouts. Anabolic steroids can be injected or taken orally. It is commonly used in high-contact sports that have strenuous activity like football or rugby. Bodybuilders and weightlifters also commonly misuse anabolic steroids as well. And although there is a stereotype for only men to use roids, women have been known to use anabolic steroids as well. In just a second, we will watch a quick video about the history of anabolic steroids in sports. In 1976, the International Olympic Committee, or the IOC, bans the use of steroids. In July of 1981, U.S. discus thrower Ben Plunkett tests positive for anabolic steroids. He loses his world record title, and he is the first athlete to be disqualified by the International Association of Athletic Federations due to a positive drug test. In 1987, the National Football League begins testing players for steroids. In 1988, Congress passes the Anti-Drug Abuse Act, which makes the possession and distribution of non-prescription anabolic steroids for non-medical purposes a crime. In 1990, Congress strengthens the 1988 law by classifying anabolic steroids as a controlled substance. Finally, in 1999, the IOC creates the World Anti-Doping Agency. Alright, the next one we will be discussing is stimulants. The most common is caffeine, which we all know about, but it also includes cocaine, amphetamines, and ecstasy. These stimulants affect the central nervous system by increasing alertness, concentration, metabolic rate, power, strength, and by decreasing time until fatigue. Sports like Taekwondo use caffeine to delay fatigue and to have faster reaction times. Speed sports have also reported having faster times when ingesting some type of caffeine before a race or a workout. Although caffeine is only monitored in some sports like the Olympics, it is actually banned in the NCAA if an athlete has a urine concentration of 15 micromilligrams per milliliter or higher. This would mean one would have to drink about 10 cups of coffee, which is quite a lot before a race. All other types of stimulants are banned in performance sports as well. As you can see in this picture, the lowest amount is decaf coffee at 3 milligrams, and then we get to our highest, which is normal brewed coffee at 95 milligrams. And this is just represents the caffeine in different drinks, so that way you can see that. The next one we will be discussing is beta blockers. The most common is called propranolol, and it lowers blood pressure by blocking certain sympathetic nervous system receptors. It helps hand trembling, nervousness, and relaxes muscles. Currently, golfers, motorsports, archery, shooting, billiards, and darts prohibit beta blockers in competition. However, there has been some discrepancy on its ban since most people who take beta blockers use it for nervousness, which actually evens out the playing field in sports, given that some athletes don't get nervous in front of big crowds while others do. Human growth hormones. Human growth hormones are found naturally in the body, and they can be injected. It has an anabolic effect that increases lean muscle mass, bone density, muscle strength, and it decreases fat mass. Injections of human growth hormones can be hard to detect in drug tests because it is found naturally in our bodies already, and it tends to spike a little during and after workouts. Mostly power performance athletes use human growth hormones, but endurance athletes have been known to use it in combination with blood doping methods. The last one we will be discussing is anti-estrogen. It is most commonly called androgen doping, and it can be used directly through the use of exogenous androgens, which means it's androgens that are being put inside of you that aren't already in your body, and then it can be used indirectly through the use of oestrin blockades, which basically just increases the amount of testosterone in the body. Anti-estrogens enhance muscle mass, strength, and increase testosterone produced in the body. Keep in mind that androgens are naturally occurring in both men and women and can be misused by both. Androgens are just another form of steroids in the body, so this is why you see the same effects as anabolic steroid use. This pie chart shows the sports with the greatest violations in the Anti-Doping Handbook as of 2015. This chart clearly points out that besides cycling, the high power and performance sports have the most violations, which raises some questions. As you can see, bodybuilding has the most, followed by weightlifting, cycling, powerlifting, football, rugby, boxing, wrestling, and finally basketball. So why are performance-enhancing drugs banned in the first place? Well, first of all, they create an unfair playing field. Why should some athletes get away with cheating and others who do play by the rules end up falling short when it comes to championships and gold medals? Secondly, it is dangerous to athletes' health and their well-being. Many of the substances, like blood doping for example, causes thickening of the blood, heart disease, stroke, and cerebral and pulmonary embolisms. There are many serious conditions that performance-enhancing drugs can cause as well. In the worst cases, they result in death. The third reason is that many dietary supplements are not tested by the FDA or the USDA, meaning that there can be harmful traces in these products, or they can cause short or long-term effects that we just don't know about yet. Number 4, it negatively influences children and fans. When fans, especially children, see their idols getting caught with these violations of substance abuse, they think that they too can use these substances and become successful. Number 5 is some substances are just simply illegal in the US, so why should they be legal in sporting events? Number 6, the sport loses its integrity and purity. If a majority of its successful athletes only succeed due to the performance-enhancing drugs, it leaves a bad impression on fans and even on non-sports fans as well. Number 7, it's not morally right. Violating these rules is cheating, which is a moral no-no in many people's eyes. As you can see in this chart, it shows a comparison of Olympic and non-Olympic sports that flunked drug tests from 2003 to 2015. The highest flunk rate was in 2007, with the Olympic sports being the most, and then it slowly began to decline in 2010. In 2011, notice that there is a slow rise until we reach 2015. What is interesting though is that 2015 shows that non-Olympic sports have a higher ratio of flunk tests for the first time on this chart. What has caused the substance abuse shift from being only in the Olympics to non-Olympic sports, such as NFL, MLB, and the NBA? So, are these substances normalized in performance sports? Well, yes, for the most part, doping in professional sports has become a norm in today's society. The author in our textbook mentions a few reasons as to why they are normalized. Number 1, there's a huge emphasis on discovering new science and technology when it comes to the human body and testing the limits. Number 2 is there is a lot of gender transitioning, usually meaning using substances to alter one's gender ideology. Number 3, power and performance sports emphasize over-conformity to this norm. Number 4, coaches, owners, media, and even fans put high expectations on athletes that promote defiant behavior through substance abuse. And finally, number 5, the resources from sports are used to research, develop, and increase access to these performance-enhancing drugs. So, the war on doping actually uses an absolutist approach, meaning that any violation of substance abuse is immoral and a defiance. It also penalizes only the athletes who use these drugs. Meanwhile, it protects owners, officials, and media and sponsors who actually promote this kind of activity. It also creates a major money-making industry, with industries like the IOC, the WADA, and the USADA. All these agencies aid in the research and promotion of anti-doping agencies, which they make billions of dollars off of. Another reason is technology and scientific advancements are being tested. More substances and methods are being produced to further enhance performance more than it already is, and to find new ways for substances to not come positive on test. Finally, it blinds the public eye of sports fans that sports are pure, meaning it still gives a pure impression on the eyes of the public that these sports and athletes are in fact role models and are successful due to only their hard work. In this next statistic, it is from a polling site that asks people questions on various subjects. This one is about the declining trust in athletics. The blue represents the people who think that there is a problem or a widespread problem. And the green represents the people who think that there used to be a problem or there was never a problem at all. There are 4 times more people who think it is a problem compared to those who think it is not a problem. The ratio only further separates when you look at the poll in 2015, where 72 think that it is a problem. Performance-enhancing drugs have become a norm, but still the majority think it is a problem in athletics today. So there is an alternative approach to the absolutist approach. Athletes aren't simply immoral or have defiant coaching staff. Rather, they uncritically accept and conform to the norms of a sport ethic. Number 2, they are part of a league or a sports program in which supplements are needed to recover from vigorous training, such as the NFL, which we all know about. And number 3, they have little control over their decisions or feel pressured by society. So you might ask, should we or shouldn't we drug test athletes? Well, there are many reasons as to why one side is better for the other, but too many people all have different opinions on this matter, which doesn't allow for much change. There are some reasons for both. As we can see, people who think that there should be drug tests, they think that it generates fairness, it protects athletes' health, it protects children from defiant drug use when they see their idols using these type of drugs. And number 4, it preserves the integrity of the sport, which we talked about earlier. Finally, we see why people shouldn't be drug tested. Their reasons are these tests are ineffective because athletes are usually one step ahead of the cheating system. And number 2, these testings violate privacy rights. Number 3, it costs lots of money to do these drug tests, which drains a lot of resources from these big sporting programs. And number 4, not all drugs can be detected. To end the presentation, we will watch a short video that discusses the reasons why or why not athletes use drugs. It also brings some insight as to why individuals are so drawn to the record-breaking and human-limiting testing in sports.
Fora TV, the world is thinking.
And one of the big reasons I think elite sport is so interesting is that its achievements tell us something about who we are, what we are capable of as human beings. If we're ever good enough to play at that level, it might be about ourselves as individuals, but it tells us something. You know, Usain Bolt's records in the Olympic Games tell us how fast a human being can run 100 meters. And it matters because it's not about getting in a car and driving 100 meters. The marathon is not interesting because how fast can somebody go 26.2 miles? Or the Tour de France is not interesting because we can get on a motorcycle and ride around France in the summertime. It's interesting because it tells us performances about ourselves. And we know a lot about why this matters from an anthropologist by the name of Clifford Geertz. And Clifford Geertz's research was on Balinese cockfighting. And a very interesting sport. He's looking at it again as a scholar. And why are the Balinese so fascinated by cockfighting? And he looks at the sport and he looks at the gambling, and nobody's really making any money. At the end of the day, everyone comes home pretty much even. If you extend it out over enough time, nobody really is coming ahead. You know, there was so much chance involved. But what he sort of realizes is that in the Balinese cockfight, and he universalizes, so we can say the same about the American baseball fields and football fields. We can say this about British cricket and British rugby, that these are stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. They tell us something about who we are. And we embody in them our cultural values, our worldviews, the things that are important to us, the things that we care about. So as pharmacology and medicine have become more integral parts of our lives, they've also become integral parts of our sports. The sports act like that mirror. And when we look at this doping debate, and this is what I'm going to be talking about, the question of should athletes be allowed to use these drugs? So we've heard what they are, we've heard what they do. They're powerful, they can shape sport, they can help us to do better. The question is, what role should they play, or should they play no role? And I like this picture because it acts a little bit like a Rorschach test. What you see here tells you sort of about how you already feel about doping. One side looks at this sort of picture and has the anxiety, the question of remaking humans into something sort of grotesque. And part of the doping debate grabs this and says, we want to ban doping, we want to prevent doping, we want to stop doping because of how it's going to remake ourselves into something worse. We could sort of damage ourselves. And there's another side of the debate that embraces doping because of what it promises. Our ability to remake ourselves into something better, to push further our limits, to find out our ultimate potential, what the Olympic Games talks about as the faster, higher, stronger. That idea of what really can we do.
Thank you so much for listening to my presentation on doping in sports. I hope you enjoyed.